Hi, this is Natalie Sanford. I'm going to be talking about the Doohickeys problem for week 12, the final week. All right, so this week we're talking about the critical problem for these last little bits, and I decided the critical problem this week was going to be dismissing employees. This is critical because you have to have a process and a structure in place for dismissing employees properly. Even though it is a work at will state, you can still get yourself into a lot of trouble legally and end up paying out unemployment if you don't have proper documentation and procedures in place. So in the problem, we have seen it stated that a manufacturing supervisor wanted an employee fired because he talked back to his supervisor. And when he was asked to present documentation, the supervisor claimed that none was needed since it is a work at will state and it's okay to just fire somebody. It is true, however, there are some exceptions in that, some problems with that. The supervisor wants to fire the employee to set an example to the other employees and prevent them from joining together in mutiny. The only other reason the supervisor states the employee should be fired is simply that he doesn't like the employee and that he dresses funny. And this creates a problem because we'll see there is no documentation, there is no follow through, there's no procedure to follow, and this employee could probably have a case for being fired wrongfully or due to discrimination. It will prevent some of the other issues, this critical problem, from becoming a bigger problem. So the other issues were discipline, labor unions forming, noncompliance with wage and hour laws, and layoffs. So if we can address what's happening with the dismissal and kind of leading up to that, then all of those problems will kind of fix themselves. So right now with our solutions, one idea is to set expectations and publish them clearly. So we'd want to meet with employees in small groups or one-on-one to inform them of the rights that they have of the employees and the employers in a termination situation. So we'd want to state clearly what constitutes an immediate termination and what procedures happen for smaller violations that could lead up to a termination. This can be time-consuming and tedious to meet with all employees, but it's important for employees to understand the expectations. This is how unnecessary legal action can be avoided. So the kind of pros and cons are that it is really time-consuming, and to avoid some of that, we can set up small meetings, small team meetings. We can do it in an online situation. We could do it in an email setting. Preferably, it would be done in person so we can make sure the expectations are clearly understood. Solution 2 is going to be have a very specific and clear policy and procedure. And this is a pretty basic 1, 2, 3 system: verbal warning, and then it proceeds to a written warning, and then a final warning. And so we would have a systematic approach to discipline at this point. So a termination should never be a surprise. Either an egregious violation took place or there has been many warnings leading up to the termination. So the 3-step process right here, this is pretty common among a lot of employers, and it can be easily understood and it can be pretty easily executed. And so the downside of this one is that it does take a lot of follow through, and it does take a long time between warnings. And so if we have an employee that is continuing to just drag it out, it kind of takes a long time to go between these things. And but this can be avoided by it. There doesn't have to be a big long time frame between each warning. This can be done as quickly or as shortly as possible, and so we can get around some of those things. Solution 3 is going to be to have a really good documentation filing system. So it would be as simple as coming up with either digital files that are confidential and locked down, or these file folders that paper copies can be made. So we would just want to keep detailed paperwork explaining the actions that were taken. We'd want to document and file any of the verbal, written, or final warnings. And if there was an immediate termination, we'd want to document that. So if the employee were to come back later, they could see that we were well within our rights to terminate them. And it would cover us as far as the legal ramifications. The forms are pretty simple to be made. They're an easy template that could be fill in the blank type things for all the supervisors to do. So next is our solution 4. We would want to really meet regularly with employees. It doesn't have to be done by one person, by the HR director. It could be done with supervisors. They would just have to make sure that that's being done and followed through. So we'd want to make sure the issues are addressed immediately and in a timely manner and documented. And then we would want to have extra meetings with those employees that might be struggling or that are on any disciplinary action. So this might seem like a lengthy and drawn out process when you want to just, move it along with an underperforming employee. However, if we don't want to set a culture of erratic termination, because that can be disastrous for the culture of our company, for the existing employees, and it can be a real nightmare for HR and down the road for any legal ramifications. So we want to set a culture where we have expectations and we have follow through, and we want to have all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted for terminations to be done properly and effectively and make it a welcome place for everyone to work. And that's all I have. Here's our works cited from the Harvard Business School. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for coming.